Well, there's a new bombshell report out today from the former head of the DNC, tearing the DNC apart. We'll talk about it, plus the Republican tax bill, and President Trump goes after immigration. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Alrighty, so this Donna Brazile report in Politico is pretty astonishing for a number of reasons. I'm going to go through them, and it just demonstrates how in the tank the media were for the Democratic Party, that so little of this came out over the past couple of years during the center of the election cycle. It does demonstrate also how in the tank the DNC was for Hillary Clinton and how Bernie Sanders really got jobbed. And furthermore, it demonstrates why Bernie Sanders is the future of the party. But I'll explain all of that in just 1 second. First, I want to say thank you to our sponsors over at Dollar Shave Club. So you've heard me talk about using Dollar Shave Club products. I've used everything from their body cleanser and their hair gel to their razors under the chin, and it is just fantastic stuff. Dollar Shave Club makes products for your hair, face, skin, shower, everything you need. It's all their own original stuff, and they use only the finest premium ingredients. They deliver it directly to you, just like they do their razors. So no longer do you have to make these annoying trips to the store trying to figure out what all of these things do. Now, Dollar Shave Club provides you pretty much everything that you need. Razors, body cleanser, hair gel, and yes, even their fabled butt wipes. Now is a great time to give Dollar Shave Club a try. You can get your first month of their best razor along with travel-sized versions of shave butter, body cleanser, and yes, those magnificent butt wipes for just $5. After that, replacement cartridges ship for just a few bucks a month. It is the DSC starter set. Get yours for just $5 exclusively at dollarshaveclub.com/Ben. That's dollarshaveclub.com/Ben. Best shave you'll ever have, plus all of their other materials are just as good. dollarshaveclub.com/Ben, and that's what you, and with that, you get $5, their starter set for just $5, which includes all of the first month of their razor along with the travel-sized versions of all their other awesome products. So go check that out right now, dollarshaveclub.com/Ben. Okay, so we begin with this bombshell report from Donna Brazile. So you remember Donna Brazile. Donna Brazile was a CNN commentator, former part of the Al Gore campaign in 2000, and she was made interim head of the Democratic National Committee after Debbie Wasserman Schultz was basically ousted for handing the DNC over to Hillary Clinton and using it as a weapon against Bernie Sanders. And Donna Brazile had already at that point, I believe, been leaking questions to Hillary Clinton, debate questions to Hillary Clinton from the CNN desk before the debate. She was actually let out of her CNN contract. She was essentially fired, as I recall. And she is now coming out trying to explain that she is not at fault, right? She is fine. It's just the DNC that was a wreck. And what she has to say about the Democratic National Committee really does demonstrate that the sort of division that I was talking about, I've been talking about for a year now on this show, the tripartite division inside the DNC, the division between Hillary followers, Obama followers, and Bernie followers is very real, and that Bernie is actually winning this battle. So here are some of the revelations from Donna Brazile's piece at Politico. This is from her new book that is coming out shortly. First of all, Brazile is obviously trying to shield herself. She's obviously doing the "I'm shocked to find there's gambling going on here" routine. She portrays herself as Hercule Poirot, as Encyclopedia Brown, entering the situation and trying to determine where the malfeasance has been at the DNC, like she didn't know. Right? She talks in this article about it's a week before the election, and she's been sussing out how Bernie Sanders got screwed, and she is just so devastated by it. She says, I love this, she says, "Before I called Bernie Sanders, I lit a candle in my living room and put on some gospel music. I wanted to censor myself for what I knew would be an emotional phone call." I mean, really, if you're going to write a movie about yourself, try not to make it so cliche, Donna. I mean, really, you put on candles, you lit candles and put on gospel music? Really? Come on, I guess if she'd been the villain, she would have put on Beethoven, right? That's the way that all the bad movies work. In any case, this is the same lady who, as I say, leaked debate questions to Hillary, now claiming that she was trying to just bring honesty to the Democratic National Committee. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, her predecessor, was a disaster who turned the entire party over to Hillary, according to Brazile. She says, "My predecessor, Florida Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, had not been the most active chair in fundraising at a time when Barack Obama's neglect had left the party in significant debt. As Hillary's campaign gained momentum, she resolved the party's debt and put it on a starvation diet. It had become dependent on her campaign for survival, for which she expected to wield controls of its operations." So according to Brazile, basically what happened is that the Democratic Party had run up on hard times. Obama had cleaned the place out. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz didn't want to do the fundraising. So instead, she went to Hillary and said, "You do all the fundraising. You fill back in that hole. You backfill that gap in our funding, and I'll let you run the DNC," basically. This is according to Donna Brazile. All the Bernie people who were complaining that the thing was rigged, all of Trump's statements that it was rigged against Bernie, all of that was true. Third point here, Obama cleaned out the party. So for all of the talk about how Barack Obama was the great savior of the Democratic Party, the new FDR, the man who had revitalized the Democratic Party, not only did Obama devastate the Democratic Party down ballot, losing over 1,000 state seats in legislatures across the country, losing 13 gubernatorial seats, losing 12 Senate seats. Not only did he do all of those things, he also cleaned them out financially. Brazile says that by the time she took over the DNC, the Democratic Party was broke and $2 million in debt. This is in the middle of an election cycle where Hillary is raising oodles and gobs of cash. According to Brazile, Obama, after 2012, left the party $24 million in debt. $24 million in debt. Okay, Barack Obama, that great beacon of light for the Democratic Party, he basically bankrupted the party. And his campaign said they wouldn't pay it off until 2016. So what did they do? Wasserman Schultz had grown the staff, right? She actually grew the staff. She didn't cut. She didn't put the party on a starvation diet. She grew the staff and allowed the DNC to pick up the check for Obama consultants. So Obama had already run the party into the ground, but the DNC was continuing to pay using the credit card for all of Obama's consultants, which is pretty amazing. So what happened? They turned it over to Hillary, and Hillary was supposed to come in and fill in the gap. So Hillary used that debt to pick up power. Gary Gensler, who is the chief financial officer of the Hillary campaign, apparently, quote, described the party as fully under the control of Hillary's campaign, which seemed to confirm the suspicions of the Bernie camp. The campaign had the DNC on life support, giving it money every month to meet its basic expenses, while the campaign was using the party as a fundraising clearinghouse. And here's where you get into some dicey territory. Hillary Clinton was apparently using the DNC almost to launder money. I mean, not in a strict legal sense, but in a sort of colloquial sense. She was basically using the DNC to launder money. Here's what Brazile explained. She says less than half of 1% of all the money that Hillary raised for the DNC actually went to the state parties. Instead, it all went right back into campaigning for Hillary. Brazile says when the Politico story described this arrangement as, quote, essentially money laundering for the Clinton campaign, Hillary's people were outraged at being accused of doing something shady. Bernie's people were angry for their own reasons, saying this was part of a calculated strategy to throw the nomination to Hillary. Which, of course, it was. All the money was coming into the DNC vis-a-vis Hillary, and it wasn't being used for Democratic Party operations. It was being used to campaign for Hillary Rodham Clinton personally. So they let Hillary have run of the shop, and she immediately corrupted the DNC in the same way that she corrupted the State Department, in the same way the Clinton Foundation was corrupt. All of which leads to the sixth point here. Bernie got completely jobbed. Okay, Bernie got completely jobbed. If the DNC had not handed all of its operations over to Hillary, to the point where Hillary for America was basically running the DNC from Brooklyn, from her Brooklyn offices, every press release from the DNC apparently had to be vetted through Hillary's office. If that had not been happening, Bernie probably wins the nomination, or at the very least, it's an extraordinarily close race, even closer than it ended up being. Brazile basically admits that Hillary was in charge of the DNC from August 2015. August 2015. The first primaries didn't take place until January 2016. So before Bernie was even seriously running, the party had been turned over to Hillary Clinton, a candidate for the nomination, which is insane. Brazile says, quote, the funding arrangement with the HFA, that's Hillary for America, and the Victory Fund agreement was not illegal, but it sure looked unethical. If the fight had been fair, one campaign would not have control of the party before the voters had decided which one they wanted to lead. And all of this leads to the final point here. It is very obvious that Bernie Sanders lost the battle in 2016, but he absolutely won the war. If Bernie had won the nomination, maybe he doesn't beat Trump, right? Maybe he's just a crazed old loonbag socialist from Vermont who couldn't defeat Donald Trump, and Hillary is sitting somewhere crying into her beer, and we get Hillary running again in 2020. But Bernie Sanders didn't win the nomination. And now the widespread perception, apparently correct, is that Bernie Sanders was cheated out of the nomination by the Democratic Party establishment. And so Bernie can now run as the anti-establishment outsider again in 2020 and as the loyal soldier, because according to Brazile, she went to Bernie with all of this 1 week prior to the election. Bernie didn't say, I want to blow this up or I'm going to go public with this. Instead, Bernie swallowed hard and he said, I'm going to campaign for Hillary against Trump. If Bernie runs for the nomination in 2020, he will win the nomination in 2020 and he may win the presidency, which is very scary for the country. Very frightening for the country. Okay, but Bernie Sanders is now where the power lies in the Democratic Party, and Brazile is making that clear. Donna Brazile is a political animal. Donna Brazile is a political survivor, and what she's doing here is she's basically tossing Hillary Clinton to the wolves so that she can get in good with the Bernie Sanders folks, who she feels are the next wave in the Democratic Party. And you can see this, right? All of the major Democratic players in 2020 are already endorsing Medicare for all. They're already moving along Bernie Sanders' lines, trying to outflank Bernie Sanders. Good luck with that. Their only hope is that Bernie stays out of the primaries in 2020 and then endorses someone. That is their only hope. If Bernie runs in 2020, he will win the Democratic nomination. He will defeat Joe Biden. He will defeat Kamala Harris for sure. Bernie Sanders will have the power of revenge behind him. Plus, Bernie Sanders has a better feel for what voters want to hear in some of the swing states that Hillary lost than Hillary Clinton did. There's a significant possibility that Bernie Sanders is president in 2020 because of Hillary Clinton. Okay, if that's not scary to you, then you haven't been following Bernie Sanders' career in any significant way. So that's the news out of Democratic land, where they've torn each other apart. Bernie Sanders owns the party because Hillary Clinton corrupted the party and Barack Obama bankrupted the party. And Bernie Sanders is the only solution. Pretty amazing stuff. Pretty amazing switch from a guy who was at the fringe of the Democratic Party to basically now being the center of gravity inside of it. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the new tax proposal that Republicans just put out. I think it's quite good, but it's quite bad for people like me. I'll explain why that is in just a second. But first, I want to say thank you to our friends over at Policy Genius. So, life insurance is something that you should have if you're an adult. I have life insurance myself. Our company has life insurance on me. So if the show starts to tank and I'm found dead, you'll know who to blame. But in any case, life insurance is something that if you're an adult with a family, you should absolutely have it. If you have kids, you owe it to yourself and your family to have a life insurance policy. Most people do not have a good life insurance policy, but Policy Genius lets you compare life insurance from the top providers online. It takes as little as 5 minutes, or if you're busy, 1 minute per day for 5 days. If you find a policy you like and you want to know more, you can talk to one of their licensed experts, but if you're just browsing, you don't have to talk to anybody. You can just browse away. They don't just do life insurance. You can get disability insurance, renter's insurance, pet insurance, and you can compare health insurance as well. Policy Genius makes the business of insurance and obtaining it incredibly easy and a lot better than sort of the non-transparent system that people have been using before. You know, there are all these other sites that compare travel prices, but there's nothing like this for insurance except for Policy Genius. This is where Policy Genius comes in. Make sure that you are getting the right price for the right policy. If you need life insurance but you've been putting it off, try it. It's quick, it's easy, and it's something you owe to yourself. PolicyGenius.com. You should only be forced to speak to an agent if you've committed a federal crime, so there's no reason why you should have to talk to a life insurance agent. But what you should do, undoubtedly, is you should go and check out their varying price points and see what works best for you. Okay. So, back to the Republican tax plan here. So the Republicans have now released their tax plan, and it's got some good stuff and it's got some bad stuff. Basically, if you're in California and you own a home, you're screwed. This is basically how this works. If you're anywhere else in the country, this plan is probably quite good for you. But if you are in California, you just get jobbed by this plan if you're in the upper tax bracket. So for people like me, I'm in top tax bracket in California. That means I am just going to get nailed. I would vote for this tax plan anyway because I think the tax plan is quite good. So here's what the tax plan does. It lowers the corporate tax rate from 35% to 20%. This is a good thing. It also lowers the pass-through tax rate on what they call S corporations from close to 40% down to 25%, which is also a good thing because our corporate tax rates are the highest in the industrialized world. They are higher than France. They are higher than Japan. They are higher than the UK. They are higher than Germany. Bring it down to 20% would put us right in the middle of the pack. That is a good thing. It also narrows the tax brackets. Right now, there are 7 tax brackets. This would get rid of 4 of them. It would bring it down to, or it would get rid of 3 of them rather. It would bring it down to 4 tax brackets as opposed to 7. It would actually negatively impact people who are making over $400,000 a year. If you were making over $400,000 a year, then you are paying 39.6% in the. If you're paying. No matter what, you're paying 40% tax bracket if you're making about $420,000 a year. This new program would lift that cap to $500,000 a year, but it would also make it that if you're making more than $400,000 a year, you're paying a 35% tax as opposed to a 33% tax. So it raises taxes slightly for people in that tax bracket, but then increases the next station on the belt. So if you're making precisely $500,000, this is not necessarily a good deal for you. If you're making more than $500,000, then the deal is probably fine for you. You don't really lose much through it. If you are making below $200,000 a year, your taxes go down no matter what tax bracket you're in. If you make under $37,000 a year, your tax bracket goes down from 15 to 12. If you are making under $200,000 a year, your tax bracket goes down from 28 to 25. The capital gains and dividend tax rates stay exactly the same. The estate tax is basically chopped in half. So if you are, right now, you pay, the estate tax I think is evil. This idea the government gets to raid your coffin for cash. You die, the government immediately runs into your safe and just takes out the money that you've already paid taxes on. Pretty terrible. But right now what this plan would do is to take the estate tax, which is 40% on estates above 5.5 million, and doubles it so that the estate tax only applies on estates above 11.2 million, and then in 2024, it just is eliminated completely. It just goes away completely, so no more estate tax, which of course is the proper solution, considering that anybody who knows what they're doing with taxes simply signs a living will, and then they don't have to pay an estate tax anyway, right? A living will just allows you to essentially transfer your assets over before your death to your children, so that way they're not inheriting from you. It's only inheritance that gets screwed here. The GOP tax plan does repeal the deduction for state and local income and sales taxes. This is why I say if you're in California, you're screwed. Okay, now, I don't think this is a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing for me, right? I think I'm in trouble here because California has a 10% state income tax, which is insane. So basically, the way that it used to work is that I would take that as a deduction against my federal tax. Now I can't do that anymore under the Republican tax plan. So basically, if I'm in the top tax bracket, or at least the portion of my income that's in the top tax bracket, I'm going to be paying 39.6% on that, and then I'm going to be paying an additional 10% on that from the state of California. Right, which is pretty insane. So I'm paying 50% of all that money to the state or federal government, which is pretty crazy, especially because, as I've said, I don't agree with tax plans that increase taxes on people who are wealthy, because the people who are making a lot of money are also the people who are investing a lot of money, saving a lot of money, and allowing free commerce to flourish. It also allows a deduction for property taxes, but it caps it at $10,000. So again, it punishes people in California. California has some pretty significant property taxes, even though it's been capped by Prop 13. In places like Massachusetts, which have a huge property tax, that is going to just destroy them. The purpose here, on a political level, is to force a lot of the blue states to reconsider whether their taxes should be quite this high. And it is not fair that Texas has been basically paying the freight for California through this particular tax deduction. Republicans are going to curtail the deductions. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. Individuals take for state and local tax payments and the ones businesses get for the interest they pay on debt. But it doesn't charge the 401k savings accounts, which is good. It also calls for leaving the top individual tax rate at 40%, but pushing the income threshold to $1 million for married couples. There are some holes that I think Democrats are going to try and exploit here. The holes they're going to try and exploit are, again, the failure to take into account state income taxes, and also that it gets rid of deductions for medical expenses. So people who have HSAs don't really have to worry about it, but if you have a serious medical problem and you're paying lots of money and now you can't take that deduction in the same numbers you were before, that is going to hurt you. And that's where the Democrats are going to attack. They're going to say, you're killing Obamacare already, and now you're trying to take away my deduction for the medical care. Why are you punishing people who have health problems? That's where the Democrat line of attack is likely to come. So as I say, there are a couple of political landmines. So it also, speaking of people who it's going to hurt in California and Massachusetts, the bill limits the home mortgage interest deduction. So right now you can take a home mortgage interest deduction for loans up to $1 million. Now it would only be deductible on loans up to $500,000. Well, that's not just rich people in the state of California. Basically any home in a major city in the state of California, any single family home in the state of California, you're taking a loan above $500,000. Right? The average price for a 3-bedroom in like LA is probably $750,000. So that's going to hurt some people who are middle class. And because of the larger standard deduction, so the standard deduction has gone up. That's kind of the max deduction you can give. Fewer people would have a tax incentive to make charitable deductions. So you used to give charitable deductions in order to increase your itemization. That is going to go away a little bit. Life insurers lose some tax breaks. Bank with assets exceeding $50 billion would get no deduction. Tax exempt, this is good actually. Tax exempt bonds can no longer get a tax deduction for building professional sports stadiums. So no more subsidizing the stupid LA football teams to build more stadiums. So no more of that. Overall, this is quite a good tax plan. I think that it does pick and choose in some areas that I don't exactly love. It retains the earned income tax credit, which is basically a welfare program. It also increases the child tax credit, but not as much as people like Mike Lee and Marco Rubio have suggested. But under current law, a married couple with 2 children making $60,000 would get a $13,000 standard deduction, and 4 personal exemptions worth $4,100, $4,150. That means they pay taxes on $30,000 of taxable income, which means that they are only going to be paying a very small tax bill as opposed to a significantly larger tax bill. So bottom line is that it does lower taxes for virtually everyone except the people who are at the top of the income spectrum and people living in states like California and Massachusetts. Will Trump have a majority for this? It's going to be difficult for him to cobble together a majority for anything, particularly because there's the say no to anything Trump wants caucus now, which may or may not include people like John McCain, Jeff Flake, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins. We'll see how bad the blowback is from the Democrats. What's interesting about this proposal is because Trump is not actually giving tax breaks to people at the upper end of the income spectrum like me, it's going to be difficult for the Democrats to say that he's attempting to create tax cuts for the rich at the expense of people lower in the income scale, because that simply is not true. Okay, so there is your tax breakdown. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about immigration and President Trump's plans thereon, where he is right and why he's right, but not for quite the right reasons. But for that, you're going to have to go over to dailywire.com. I have a lot to talk about still. I want to talk today about internet censorship. Both Republicans and Democrats are going to go after some major internet companies. I have pretty epic things I hate that I'm going to talk about. We're going to go after Stephen Colbert a little bit. So lots to talk about here. But for $9.99 a month, you can get a subscription to dailywire.com. You get the rest of my show live on video. You get the rest of Andrew Klavan's show live on video at 10:30. You get the rest of Michael Knowles' show live on video at 12:30. Plus, you get to be part of my mailbag, which we are doing tomorrow, in which all of your life's questions will be answered, and you get to ask me live questions, right? You actually get to ask me questions in the midst of the show, and you can see me respond in real time to your questions. So that's pretty awesome. For $99, you get the annual subscription, so discount from the monthly fee, number one. And number two, you also get this. The very greatest beverage vessel in the history of humankind. The Leftist Tears Hot or Cold Tumbler, world famous, never duplicated, often imitated Leftist Tears Hot or Cold Tumbler. So you get that when you get your annual subscription. If you want to just listen to the rest of the show, go over to YouTube and hit subscribe, please. There's a lot of new material that we're releasing nearly every day over at YouTube that you can't get just by subscribing to the audio version. Or if you just want to listen to the audio for free later, subscribe at YouTube or go to iTunes, SoundCloud, leave us a review. We always appreciate it. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.